Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm here once again, your host, Luster, the master of reality. And I'm coming here to give you just a little bit of a short video. It's something I kind of just wanted to talk about because what I said in my previous videos is that there's an overwhelming display of self-interest and self-respect that I would strongly encourage people to adopt as their own, because you will not believe the sort of things that anyone could do as long as you put your own into it. And if it's not from anything that I've learned in my books or anything that I've written down for myself, it's what you do in practice that's important. You could just as well easily say, you understand about the laws of the universe, and you can understand, morals and why people follow them and how they vary from country to country, and what different societies takes towards the idea of morals. But it is how you put them into practice is what's important. You got to be able to say for yourself, I understand, the difference between right or wrong. I can understand why saying these things might upset or please somebody else. But it could also be quite another thing when you say things without really knowing, what consequence they have, or the consequence, but you don't know what consequences those will be if you say nothing. There's a lot of talk that goes on in our day-to-day lives, ladies and gentlemen, but not enough action. Or rather, there's not enough action that happens before we do all the talking. In fact, I think, what I might do? Give us 1 second. I'm going to find out, ladies and gentlemen, because sometimes all of my best ideas come from stuff like this. And the only reason why I'm wearing my jumper is that it's very, very cold in this room right now. That's the only reason why I'm wearing this. Let me see if I can... my giant dictionary of sociology. Let's see if we can just open up a page at random. This is something I do with my Bible quite a lot. I will find a very random page and see if we can transmute or translate, as it were, some of our thoughts and this theory of understanding morality into practice. You could say this will become a very ecumenical matter. So, random... Marginalization. Here we go. A process by which a group or individual is denied access to important positions and symbols of economic, religious, or political power within any society. A marginal group may actually constitute a numerical majority, as in the case of blacks in South Africa, and should perhaps be distinguished from a minority group which may be small in numbers but has access to political or economic power. Marginalization became a major topic of sociological research in the 1960s, largely in response to the realization that while certain developing countries demonstrated rapid economic growth, members of these societies were receiving increasingly unequal shares of the rewards of success. The process by which this occurred became a major source of study, particularly for those influenced by dependency Marxist and world system theories, who argued that the phenomenon was related to the world capitalist order and not just confined to particular societies. Anthropologists, in particular, have tended to study marginal groups. This stems in part from the idea that, by looking at what happens on the margins of a society, one can see how society defines itself and is defined in terms of other societies, and what constitute its key cultural values. See also exclusion. There we are. I'm just going to pinpoint that for 1 second. But yeah, marginalization, that's almost exactly what I wanted to build upon. Because there are many, many people like me, ladies and gentlemen, probably throughout the world right now. South Africa, France, Venezuela, Colombia, North Korea, China, Russia, all over the world. But the point is, there could be people with some very revolutionary sort of ideas, those who might reflect on political or economic minds or theories or practices that could very well be denunciated by the current system at hand. I mean, when you come to think about it, ladies and gentlemen, you think of all the great people on earth who've ever lived, who've brought change, but first had to do it through struggle, through intense determination, and years of suffering. Just take the case of South Africa, for example. Nelson Mandela spent 21 years in prison because they arrested him on terms of on terrorism for his views of of abolishing apartheid forever. And it's hard to say, ladies and gentlemen, because I remember when Nelson Mandela died on the 5th of December 2013, coming up to 9 years now since he's no longer been with us. But if anything we've learned from Nelson Mandela is that his work is not yet done. The road to freedom, ladies and gentlemen, is a road that is never-ending, because you think we've crushed one corner of marginalization, of racism, of separate development. We think we've solved one problem because we've solved it in South Africa, but then it could come up elsewhere. It could come up in Rwanda. It could come up in, well, of course, it could happen in South Korea, for example. It could happen, again, in France, in Germany. And there's no reason to suggest it isn't even happening already. Poland, for example, is now a very, very right-wing country due to the fact that they passed laws on which it was forbidden to commit abortion. And this was met with an astronomical outcry, because this, of course, seems to suggest, almost beyond anything else, that women were not entitled to say what was happening, they could do to their own bodies. Whether you believe it or not, it's the fact that they no longer have that right, which is, again, you take away somebody's rights, and of course they're going to fight for their rights back. It's not rocket science. It's a simple matter of principle. I'm not saying, of course, I advocate for abortion or anything like that, but they should have the right to decide. I should not have the right to say whether or not they should have it or not. It's that they should have the right to have that right in the first place. Again, a matter of principles. We don't marginalize them. We don't suddenly say that their opinions don't matter because they are now a minority group. Well, let me tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, people who think that way are what we call sociopaths. And guess what? They're a minority too. Think about that. And then, of course, you've got the what feels like the beginnings of a revolution in Iran. And again, without having to go too much into it, it's not particularly very difficult to see why that is. But the point, I'm trying to make, ladies and gentlemen, is that the revolution will not be televised. It will not be streamed. It is going to be sexualized. It is going to be perverse. It is going to be something that is going to be demonized, fiendicized. It's going to be something that people will go out of the way to dirty, fiddle, and muck up as much as possible. Because fear is what lies at the bottom of it. Not the fear that it won't work, but the fear that it would work, because people will wake up and see what it actually stands for. You got to think, ladies and gentlemen, it's the way that some people have operated for centuries, and it could be even down to when Nelson Mandela was first sent to prison. There'll probably be papers written about him saying "good riddance," and then there were probably the same people who were saying that they should have murdered Mandela in prison when he came out in 91 or 92. You know what I'm saying? There were even people complaining to the BBC saying that they interrupted their morning of watching Bargain Hunt because they were televising Nelson Mandela's release from prison. You got to think about these things, ladies and gentlemen. They're not just going to go away just because, again, of Nelson Mandela's walked his road to freedom. The walk is not quite over. Take care, ladies and gentlemen. There is work to be done. Always more work.